course, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you to Enfuegotainment, my namesake program. Another rapido review, and this one is all about the film that was originally supposed to be theatrical a number of months ago in the insane 2020 that we have had, and then it ended up, I think it was pushed a couple times, ended up going direct to premium home VOD, and now it is available for, as opposed to spending $20 to rent it through different streaming services, you can just go to the Redbox and spend $1.80 plus tax, or you can actually own it in a home physical release for those of you who like physical media. We're talking Antebellum. So this was one that had very vague and deliberately so trailers and Civil War era, but yet also stuff in the future, like present day. So it was like, do we have a time travel situation on our hands? And this is gonna be very tough to not review without spoiling things, which I'm gonna give a forewarning and give some thoughts about that at the end. But this is a very well-made film. I will most definitely give it props for that, especially the opening tracking shot, just going into this this plantation and just seeing the people working in the fields, and then just going towards the home and seeing some of the Confederate soldiers that are there and everything. It is a swooping and just a beautifully orchestrated bit of filmmaking. But then you very quickly get into the sort of just brutality that a lot of people who haven't even seen this movie, friends of mine from all colors, but most notably my friends that are African American. Shout out to my my homegirl Chauncey K. Robinson, who has a great YouTube channel. But yeah, so it's something that is hard for people with my color of skin to be reminded of the horrible atrocities that were being perpetuated in not just the South, but all over this country for centuries, and that was still especially contentious during the Civil War, and in certain areas of the country still very, very much a thing, especially in the South, man. A lot of those old, just horrifying ideals remain. And this film most definitely depicts them in a fashion that it's tough for me to watch, and I can only imagine how much tougher it would be for a person of color, especially it's just with the year that we have had and some of the racial disparities and atrocities that have happened and have been had seen a more prominent resurgence in the last few years. It's definitely a film that was poignant and was really trying to go for something that, unfortunately, I'm not necessarily sure how well they accomplished it. So our main actress, Janelle Monae, she's terrific in this movie. Her performance is great. We see her, as you notice in the trailer, in a couple different time periods and stuff. And so, but the problem is that this has been described to me by, close black friends of mine as slave porn. And I'm not sure if that is the proper term, but it's most definitely from, the abuse, rape, murder. We see it all. It runs the gamut. And an argument that I've heard that I actually completely agree with is the fact that we need to be reminded of this stuff, because that's in a lot of ways what will hopefully help to finally incur some change and lasting change and permanent change. But does it really have to be done in such a viciously visual fashion? A lot of my favorite horror movies and dramas and thrillers and stuff like that, there's more implying of stuff and the horrible things that are going down, as opposed to the just extended scenes of rape and abuse and stuff, which really goes more so for shock value, I think. And it's just really, it's like a shock and awe sort of situation, as opposed to being ultimately necessary for the narrative. And that's something that, especially before we kind of shift gears to a different time in the future from our Civil War era that we see initially, it really goes for the jugular, man. And I don't like watching the sort of like rape revenge stuff, or even something like, and I've talked about this with, Cecil and with, Chauncey, who I mentioned earlier, and various other people, of, either gender or, whatever color of skin. It's like, that's sort of, it's one thing if it's like a monster chewing on somebody or whatever, but if it's, like, and by that I mean like a creature of some mutated sort or whatever, an alien or whatever it may be, that's one thing. But I am most definitely far more uncomfortable with seeing just people do these horrible things to each other, and I don't find it entertaining. I know that this was a movie that was really striving to make a profound statement, and it made its statement and it got its point across, but much more so than I think it needed to. I mean, Roots is a very celebrated one that I know, tough to watch, obviously, but made for TV, and so like the pain was evident, and some of the discipline and all the terrible things that happen in that mini-series are one thing, and also even a movie that I watched last year, like Harriet, also not R-rated like Antebellum, and so I think that films go too far sometimes, and I know that it was to make people uncomfortable. So mission accomplished. You definitely made me uncomfortable, but one of my criticisms to go into, one of the malos for sure, is the fact that despite the bueno of Janelle Monae's character, a lot of the others are very one note. From the obvious Confederate soldiers and the slave owners and stuff. They're not fleshed out. They're just one note evil whitey of sorts. But then the thing that I also found disappointing was the fact that Janelle Monae's character that she plays in present day, who is this author and just a very powerful and defiant black woman who is saying a lot of stuff, especially on her interviews, that she really needs to. Her whole crew of friends, regardless of whether they're white or black or whatever, they're all one note, and they're not really very developed. Her family dynamic is kind of developed to a degree, but not to the extent that I really felt as satisfied with. It's most definitely her story, and so these are similar criticisms that I had to the Craft Legacy. That obviously completely sort of tone and message and so on, but just supporting characters being so one note and so nothing to them in a lot of ways. And also with antagonists, I mean, when you have an antagonist that they feel like a full-on, we're all shades of gray, but there are most definitely those who lean much more to that evil side of humanity. But I mean, when you understand like the mentality, and it's that much more scary when you understand a little bit better, I think, the horrible, just viewpoint and stuff that these characters are coming from. But yeah, so lack of character development in pretty much everybody except for our lead. And oh boy, is it Jenna Fisher? In any event, her name is eluding me. She's the main white antagonist as well. She's also just, I don't know. There's just not a lot done. It's just, very, very one note in that regard, without getting really too much more into it. So the film has some wonky editing in the middle, and especially the third act and stuff. And really one of the biggest things that this film, despite the unnecessary nature of the race-on-race violence which is in it, or at least to the very over-the-top extent that we see it, I have to go into feo, I have to go into ugly, I have to go into spoilers here. And those being the fact that this movie has a twist, but it's really not a twist that is anywhere near as clever as I'm assuming the filmmakers thought it to be. This is some straight up Shyamalan shit, man. Most notably The Village. So just to have full spoiler transparency and everything. So apparently this is not a time jumping sort of movie, and a woman kind of playing the same character from one generation and then maybe a descendant, generations and generations later. This is actually about as you find out in the finale, and you find it out in a very just kind of silly fashion, where dudes, these Civil War soldiers, their accents are kind of going, and you see one of them on a cell phone at one particular point, And then you realize that the film has been time jumping, but not like from the late 1800s into present day. No, it's just been showing the story just a little bit out of order, as we find out that there is a group of Civil War reenactors that have apparently kidnapped, black people and taken them to this place where they reenact the Civil War, and they're holding them all hostage. And you have to think, like, how did, like, a full-on uprising, because we all know that when it's well documented, right, that, in Civil War and post-Civil War times and things of that nature, and things leading up to it, like, just since there had been so much horrible oppression and just, unfortunately, in some ways, being subservient and just accepting this shitty, disgusting situation of oppression, that I don't think that would have necessarily happened in this day and age where, especially after post-Civil War and after the, civil rights movements and all these different things, I feel like the black community has most definitely and very rightfully so in every possible capacity, risen up and been like, fuck no, we're not dealing with this sort of shit. And that's what I kind of envision more so would have happened with, a lot of modern day, just kidnapped black people in this. And when the twist finally happens, there's this final shot of, Janelle Monae, who's just killed a bunch of these people, and she's like charging on a horse and stuff, and it's meant to be very cathartic, and it's shot well, and it's definitely like a fist-pumping sort of situation for sure, but just the nature of the twist in every regard just did not work for me, and there was some it was just an illogical, in a lot of ways, sort of situation. This definitely felt like filmmaking. This felt like make-believe sort of stuff, and for that reason, from just the hardcore aspect of the first like 40 or 50 minutes until we get into present day, so to speak, weakly developed characters aside from our lead, and just the sham hammerness of the third act twist, and the fact that it's all been, present day, and these people were, these slaves were kidnapped by these psychos. Just didn't work, man. Didn't work. It was just too over the top, too silly, I think, in its concept. And so for that reason, I give this 2 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs. The performance of Ms. Monae, and just some of the great cinematography of this film, and the message that I think it was definitely shooting for but didn't necessarily execute is, it's why it's a malo film. It's bad, unfortunately. 2 out of 5. That's my verdict here, everybody. So just to completely double down again, though, I feel like this is a tough film for me to even review, which is why I watched this on premium VOD, and I was waiting, just kind of trying to ruminate on the film a little bit more, and I still, after a lot of consideration, still feel the same way about it, from the twist to, the unnecessary brutality of it all. So, in any event, I've been Jaime En Fuego, and I voted today, hell to the diesel. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, where a like, a share, and a subscribe is supremely appreciated. If you like otherworldly, scarific stuff, my favorite sort of horror, the supernatural, the stuff that doesn't exist within our world, because this world is scary enough. The escapism of that sort of stuff is what I love covering at youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, as you see spelled below. We do at least 1 episode a day over there, and we have for over 6 years. Here on my personal channel, a few videos a week, but yeah, it just kind of depends on what there is to cover. So thank you all so very much if you stayed this far to hear my thoughts on Antebellum, and how I feel like it was a missed opportunity to make something significantly more profound. And yes, that's just my thoughts in a nutshell. So, I'm En Fuego, y'all have been rad status, and until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers, viewers alike, say thank you for tuning in, and I'm hopeful we share more film palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, stay home and watch more movies.